The mansion smelled of pine and candle wax, and Marin Ashby had polished the same brass banister 3 times before she made herself stop. She was 23 years old, and she had worked in the Han household for 8 months, long enough to know which floorboards creaked outside his study and which staff never looked him in the eye. Long enough to know that tonight, the night of his annual Christmas gathering, every member of the household staff would wear black, stand along the walls, and disappear into the wallpaper the moment a guest needed anything at all. She adjusted the collar of her uniform and carried a tray of champagne flutes into the grand hall, weaving between men in tailored suits who spoke in low voices about shipments and territory disguised as business talk. The chandelier above threw gold light across marble floors. Somewhere a string quartet played a version of Silent Night that sounded too controlled, too precise, like everything else in this house. She found him the way she always did. Not by looking, by feeling the room shift. June Han stood near the towering Christmas tree at the center of the hall, a glass of something amber untouched in his hand, listening to a man twice his age speak with the nervous energy of someone trying not to insult him. June wore black, always black, a suit cut so precisely it looked less like clothing and more like something grown onto him. His hair was combed back, a few strands loose over his forehead, and the scar above his left eyebrow caught the light when he tilted his head. He said something short. The older man laughed too quickly and excused himself. Marin had learned, in 8 months, that June Han rarely raised his voice, and everyone in the room adjusted their volume to match him anyway. She moved past him with her tray, and for 1 second his eyes found hers. He did not smile. He never smiled at staff. But something in his gaze lingered a half-beat longer than necessary, and she felt it land somewhere under her ribs before she made herself look away and keep walking. That was the moment everything changed, though she would not understand that until later. Marin had not planned on a life inside a mansion like this one. 6 months before she was hired, she had been working double shifts at a diner near the university, saving toward a certification course in medical administration that kept getting pushed back another semester every time her car needed a repair or her mother needed help with rent. A staffing agency had placed her with the Han household almost by accident, filling in for a housekeeper who never came back from maternity leave, and Marin had stayed because the pay was steady and because, in a strange way, the order of the place suited her. Everything had a system. Everything had a place. After a childhood spent bracing for chaos that never announced itself before it arrived, a house that ran on precision felt, if not safe, at least predictable. She learned the rhythms of the Han household the way she had learned to read every room she had ever walked into. She learned which of the men who came and went through the side entrance were family, which were soldiers, and which were the kind of men nobody introduced by name at all. She learned that June Han ate breakfast alone at 6 every morning regardless of how late the previous night had run, that he preferred his coffee black and untouched by conversation, and that the 2 guards stationed near his study rotated shifts at intervals so precise you could set a clock by them. She learned to disappear efficiently, to become part of the furniture the way the other staff had taught her within her first week. Do not linger. Do not ask questions. Do not let your face show what you have heard. She had broken that last rule only in her own mind, cataloging details she was never meant to keep, filing away small human moments that slipped past the mansion's careful choreography. The way June sometimes stood at the window of his study long after the house had gone quiet, staring out at the garden like he was looking for something that was never going to be there. The way his voice changed, almost imperceptibly, whenever anyone mentioned his mother's name, a subject that came up rarely and always in careful, clipped sentences from the older staff who remembered her. She had found the locket 3 weeks earlier, in a thrift store on the edge of the city, tucked inside a cracked wooden box beneath a pile of unmatched earrings. It was silver, tarnished at the edges, oval-shaped, with a small engraving on the back too worn to read clearly. Something about it had stopped her hand before she even opened it. When she pried it open with careful fingers, she found a photograph inside, a young Korean woman with soft eyes and a serious mouth, dressed in clothes from what looked like 30 years ago. She did not know why she bought it. She only knew she could not put it down. It was not until 2 weeks later, dusting the frames along the east hallway of the mansion, that she understood. The photograph hanging in gold trim outside June's study was the same woman. Younger there too, but unmistakably the same face, the same serious mouth. Underneath the frame, in small brass lettering, a single word, Mother. Maren had stood in that hallway for a long time, the locket burning a hole in her coat pocket at home, waiting. She did not know how the locket had made its way from wherever it belonged to a thrift store bin 200 miles from where the Han family conducted business. She did not know how something like that gets lost. But she understood, with a certainty she could not explain, that it needed to go back to him. She had almost decided against it a dozen times. Staff did not give the boss personal gifts. Staff did not draw his attention in ways that could not be undone. She had heard enough hallway whispers to know that June Han's world operated on rules she did not fully understand, rules where a single misstep could cost someone their position or worse. But she thought about the woman in the photograph, and she thought about a mother's face resting in a stranger's junk drawer for who knew how many years, and she wrapped the small box in plain silver paper anyway, tied with a thin red ribbon, and carried it in her apron pocket all through the party, waiting for a moment that might never come. The party thinned past midnight. Guests filtered toward the entrance in expensive coats, thanking their host with careful words, the kind of gratitude that came with an unspoken debt attached. The quartet packed their instruments. The staff began clearing glasses from side tables, and Maren felt the window closing. She found him alone near the tree. The room emptied around him, his tie already loosened at the collar, his jaw tight the way it got when a long night was finally ending. She had never approached him without being summoned. Not once. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached into her apron pocket and pulled out the small wrapped box. She crossed the room before she could talk herself out of it. "Mr. Han," she said, and her voice came out steadier than she expected. "I have something for you. It is not much, but I think it belongs to you." He turned to look at her fully, and something crossed his face that she had never seen there before.
Surprise, maybe.
Or the beginning of it. Staff did not approach him like this. Staff did not hold anything out to him like this, hands open, no tray, no purpose beyond the object itself. "What is this?" he said. Not really a question. More like he was buying himself a second to decide how to react. "Open it," she said. "Please." He studied her face for a long moment, longer than professional distance allowed, and something in his eyes made the room feel smaller than it was. Then he took the box from her hands. His fingers brushed hers for half a second, and she felt that brush travel up her arm like static. He untied the ribbon carefully, methodically, the way he seemed to do everything. He lifted the lid. For a moment he did not move at all. Then his hand rose to the box, and his fingers closed around the locket inside, and Maren watched something break open behind his eyes that she suspected very few people in this world had ever been allowed to see. His hands, the same hands she had watched shake other men's hands with total control all night, the same hands that she had heard could end a man's life, without hesitation, trembled as he lifted the locket free of the box. "Where did you find this?" he said. His voice had dropped, quiet now, almost unrecognizable from the voice he used with his guests. "A thrift store," she said. "About 3 weeks ago. I did not know it was hers until I saw her photograph in the hallway. I am sorry if this is out of place. I only wanted her to come home." He opened the locket with a care that did not match the reputation that followed him through every room he entered. He looked at the photograph inside for a long time, his throat working, his jaw tight in a way that was not anger, not tonight. "This was stolen," he said finally. 11 years ago. The night my mother died. Someone came through the house before the funeral arrangements were finished. Jewelry, mostly. My father never recovered any of it. He looked for 2 years and gave up. "I am sorry," Maren said again, because she did not know what else to offer him. "Do not apologize," he said, sharper than she expected, and then, almost immediately softer. "You found something that should not exist anymore. Do you understand how many hands this would have passed through in 11 years? Do you understand the odds against this?" "I do not believe in odds," Maren said. "I believe some things find their way back." He looked at her then in a way that made her feel, for the first time in 8 months, like he was actually seeing her. Not the maid. Not the staff uniform.
Her.
Sit with me, he said, and it was not a request the way he usually gave orders, but something gentler, something that left room for her to say no.
She should have said no.
Every rule she had absorbed in this house told her to say no. She sat. He told her, in a voice she had never heard him use, about his mother. A woman named Sue Jean, who had raised him mostly alone after his father's business swallowed every hour of the man's attention. A woman who had kept this locket close through every hard year, who had shown him the photograph inside once when he was young and told him it was the only picture she had of herself before the weight of the world reshaped her face. A woman who died of an illness the family had tried and failed to outrun with every resource they had, only for her most precious object to disappear the same week they'd buried her. My father blamed the staff, June said. He fired half the household. He never found who took it. I stopped believing it would come back a long time ago. I am glad it did, Maren said. He was quiet for a moment, turning the locket over once more in his palm before setting it gently on the table between them, as though he needed his hands free to say what came next. She used to sing while she cooked, he said.
Badly.
She knew she was bad at it, and she did it anyway, every morning, some old song from her own childhood that I never learned the name of. My father worked constantly. It was mostly her and me for years, in a house much smaller than this one, before any of this existed. He gestured vaguely at the hall around them, the marble, the tree, the wealth that had accumulated after her death like a monument built on the wrong foundation. I used to think if I built something large enough, it would mean her life had been worth something. I am not sure that is how any of this works. I think it worked, Maren said carefully. I think you built something to protect people the way she could not always protect you. He looked at her sharply, as if the observation had landed somewhere he had not expected anyone to reach. Nobody has said that to me before, he said. Maybe nobody looked closely enough to say it, she replied. Why did you buy it? He asked. You did not know whose it was. I do not know, she admitted. Something about her face. I could not leave it there. He turned a locket over in his palm, and for a long moment neither of them spoke, and the silence between them was not empty the way silence usually was in this house. It was full of something neither of them had a name for yet. You could have sold this, he said. You could have said nothing and kept it or pawned it for money. You clearly could use more than most people in this room tonight. That never occurred to me, she said honestly. It was never mine to sell. He studied her again, and this time the look lasted long enough that she felt heat rise in her face, and she was grateful the hall lights were dim enough to hide it. What is your name? He asked. Your full name, not the one on your staff badge. Maren, she said. Maren Ashby. Maren, he repeated, and the way he said it, slow, deliberate, like he was testing the shape of it in his mouth, sent something through her she was not prepared for. The next morning, everything in the house felt different, though nothing had visibly changed. Maren went about her duties the way she always did, dusting frames, folding linens, carrying trays she was not supposed to be noticed carrying. But she felt eyes on her now in a way she had not before. Not from June. From his men. She learned quickly that in this house, attention from the boss was its own kind of danger. 2 days after Christmas, one of the senior staff, a stern woman named Helena who managed the household, pulled Maren aside in the kitchen corridor. You should not have approached him directly, Helena said, her voice low, urgent. Whatever you gave him, whatever happened, you need to understand something. Men like him do not forget. And men who work for men like him do not forgive easily when someone gets close to something they consider private. I did not mean to cause trouble, Maren said. I know you did not, Helena said, and her face softened slightly. But trouble does not care what you meant. Maren did not fully understand the warning until 3 nights later, when she was leaving the mansion after her shift, walking the long gravel path toward the staff gate, and a car she did not recognize pulled alongside her, slow, deliberate. The window rolled down. A man she had never seen before studied her face for a moment too long. You are the one who gave him the locket, the man said. It was not a question. I do not know what you are talking about, she said, her pulse climbing. Careful, the man said, almost gently, which somehow made it worse. There are people who do not like it when someone gets close to Junhan. Some of those people are inside that house. Watch yourself. The car pulled away before she could ask anything else, and she stood on the gravel path with her heart hammering, the cold air suddenly sharper against her skin.
She told no one, not at first.
She told herself it was nothing, a stranger trying to unsettle her for reasons she could not know. But the warning sat in her chest like a stone for days, and she found herself watching the hallways more carefully, noticing which of June's men looked at her too long, which one stopped speaking when she entered a room. She did not see June again for nearly a week. When she finally did, he found her in the east hallway, near the photograph of his mother, and his expression was unreadable in a way that made her stomach tighten. "Someone approached you," he said. "Not a question. A statement."
"How did you know that?" she asked.
"Because I know everything that happens near this house," he said. "And because the man who spoke to you works for someone I do not trust. I want you to tell me exactly what he said." She told him. Every word. His jaw tightened as she spoke, and something cold settled behind his eyes, something that made her understand, in a way she had not fully understood before, exactly what kind of man she had given a gift to on Christmas night. "You should not have to deal with this," he said when she finished. "This is because of me. Because of what you gave me. I am sorry." "You do not need to apologize," she said, echoing his own words back to him from days before. Something flickered at the corner of his mouth, not quite a smile, but close enough that she felt it in her chest. "I am going to have someone watch the gate when you leave," he said. "Every night. Do not argue with me about this." "I was not going to argue," she said, and this time the smile did reach his mouth, brief, almost startled by its own existence. Over the following weeks, something shifted between them that neither of them named out loud. He began finding reasons to be in the same room she was in. He asked her opinion on things he had no real reason to ask a member of his household staff, about paintings in the hallway, about which parts of the garden looked neglected, about whether the kitchen staff were preparing meals he actually wanted or simply meals they assumed a man like him should eat. She found herself looking forward to these moments in a way that frightened her more than the stranger in the car ever had. One evening, nearly a month after Christmas, she was walking past his study when she heard raised voices inside, sharp and clipped in a language she recognized but did not speak. She should have kept walking. She had been trained, every day of her employment, to keep walking. Instead, she paused near the door, close enough to hear the tension in June's voice even through words she could not translate. The door opened suddenly, and a man she recognized as one of June's lieutenants stormed past her without acknowledgement, his face tight with barely contained anger. June stood in the doorway a moment later, his shirt sleeves rolled to the elbow, a tension in his shoulders she had not seen since the night of the party. "That should not have happened where you could hear it," he said. "I heard nothing I could understand," she said honestly. "Someone inside my organization is questioning my judgment," he said, his voice controlled but edged with something darker. "They believe I have grown careless. They believe you are a liability." "Because of the locket," she said quietly. "Because of you," he said, and the words landed heavier than she expected, though not unkindly. "Because for the first time in years, I have wanted to be around someone who has nothing to gain from being near me. That makes men in my world nervous. It makes them wonder what I am willing to overlook to keep you close." "And what are you willing to overlook?" she asked, surprising herself with the boldness of the question. He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell cedar and something warmer beneath it, close enough that the space between them felt charged in a way the hallway had never felt before. "I do not know yet," he said. "I have spent 11 years building walls around every part of myself that could be used against me. You walked through one of them holding a box wrapped in silver paper, and I have not figured out how to rebuild it since." She did not know what to say to that. She did not trust her own voice not to shake. "I told myself it was gratitude," he said, quieter now. "That whatever I felt toward you was simply thanks for returning something I thought was gone forever. I have been lying to myself for weeks." The silence between them stretched, taut, alive. "I should go," she whispered, though she did not move. "You should," he agreed, and neither of them moved either. It was 2 nights later when the danger stopped being a warning and became real. Marin was walking the garden path near the eastern wing, carrying folded linens toward the guest quarters, when she heard footsteps behind her, fast, deliberate, closing distance quickly. She turned in time to see a man she did not recognize, and before she could react, his hand closed around her arm hard enough to bruise. "You should not have gotten close to him," the man hissed. "Some of us are trying to fix what he has let get careless. You are a loose thread. Loose threads get cut." She did not scream. She did not freeze. She drove her elbow back into his ribs with everything she had, breaking his grip long enough to twist free, and she ran, not toward the mansion's front entrance, but toward the side door near the kitchen where she knew staff kept a panic switch installed after an incident years before she was hired. Her hand slammed the switch just as the man rounded the corner behind her, and within seconds the garden lights flared to full brightness, alarms sounding through the grounds, and the quiet winter night erupted into motion, men pouring from the house, shouts in two languages overlapping. June reached her before anyone else did, his expression something she had never seen on him before, raw and unguarded and furious all at once. He grabbed the man who had followed her by the collar with a violence that was precise, economical, terrifyingly controlled, and the fight that followed lasted seconds, not minutes, ending with the intruder on the ground and two of June's men dragging him away into the dark. June turned to her immediately, his hands finding her shoulders, checking her over with an urgency that had nothing calculated about it. "Are you hurt?" he said, his voice rough in a way she had never heard. "I am fine," she said, though her hands were shaking now that the adrenaline was draining. "I got away. I am fine." "You should not have had to get away," he said, and something in his voice cracked slightly, something that sounded almost like guilt. "This is what I warned you about. This is what happens near me." "I am still here," she said. "That was my choice tonight, and it is my choice now." He looked at her like the words had physically struck him. Inside, once the grounds were secured and the intruder taken to whatever fate awaited men who crossed June Han, they sat together in his study, the locket resting on the desk between them where he had kept it since Christmas night. "That man worked for someone inside my own organization," June said. "Someone who believes softness is a weakness that gets men like me killed. He is not entirely wrong. But he does not understand what I found the night you gave me that box."
"What did you find?" she asked.
"Something I thought I had buried with my mother," he said. "The ability to feel something without calculating what it costs me first." He reached across the desk and took her hand, his fingers steady now, no trace of the tremor that had marked them the night he opened her gift. "I am going to end this," he said. "Whoever moved against you tonight, whoever believes they can threaten what is mine, I am going to end it completely. Not because it is expected of me, because I choose to." "I do not need you to fight my battles," she said. "I know," he said, and something like admiration crossed his face. "That is precisely why I want to." The days that followed the garden attack were tense in a way the household had not felt in years. Staff spoke in whispers about a meeting that had taken place behind the closed doors of the study, one that ran past midnight and left two of June's senior men absent from the property the next morning, their absence explained to no one and questioned by no one either. Marin kept working, kept her head down, kept telling herself the danger was contained, until the afternoon she was summoned to the study directly, an event that had never happened in her 8 months of employment. June stood at the window when she entered, his back to her, his shoulders set in a way that made her stomach tighten before he even spoke. "The man who attacked you is working for someone named Deacon Voss," he said without turning around. "A rival who has wanted my territory for 2 years and has never found an opening large enough to use. He believes that whatever softness I have shown you is a door he can walk through. He is going to try again. Soon." "How soon?" Marin asked, keeping her voice steady though her pulse had climbed. "I do not know," he admitted, finally turning to face her. "That is what frightens me. I have spent my entire adult life certain of outcomes before they happened. I have never had to guess with something that mattered this much." "Then let me help you think it through," she said. "You do not have to carry it alone." He studied her for a long moment, something unreadable moving behind his eyes. "You are staff," he said quietly. "You should not be standing in this room discussing strategy with me. And yet here you are, and I find I do not want you anywhere else." That night, Voss made his move directly. A black sedan idled at the edge of the property near the staff gate, and two of June's guards intercepted it before it reached the house, but not before a message arrived, delivered by hand to the front entrance in a plain envelope addressed to June Han personally. Marin was in the hallway when he opened it, and she watched his face go rigid, all warmth draining from it in an instant. "What does it say?" she asked. He did not answer immediately. When he finally spoke, his voice had dropped into something colder than she had ever heard from him.
"He knows your name," June said.
"He knows where your mother lives. He is telling me that softness has a cost, and he intends to collect it from you if I do not step aside from 2 territories he wants by the end of the month." Fear moved through her, sharp and immediate, but underneath it something else rose too, something harder. "Then we do not let him," she said. "I am not going to hide because a man I have never met decided I am leverage." "This is not a negotiation you can win with courage alone," June said. "I did not say I would win it with courage alone," she said. "I said I am not going to hide. There is a difference." He looked at her for a long moment, and something in his expression shifted, respect layering over the fear she saw plainly on his face for the first time since she had known him. Within 2 days, June had moved her mother to a property outside the city under guard, a decision Marin argued against on principle and accepted with relief in practice. He doubled security around the mansion, called in men she had never seen before, men whose stillness reminded her of his own. And on the 3rd night, when Voss's men attempted to breach the eastern wall under cover of a snowstorm, they found the grounds ready for them, and the confrontation that followed was fast, brutal, and entirely one-sided. Marin did not witness the worst of it, but she heard enough from her window to understand that whatever June Han was capable of, he had chosen, that night, to use every part of it in her defense. 3 days later, the threat inside his organization was dealt with in ways she was not given details about, and did not ask for. Voss's name stopped appearing in the tense conversations that drifted through the hallways. The house grew quieter, safer, the tension that had followed her through hallways for weeks finally lifting. On a cold evening in January, June found her again near his mother's photograph in the east hallway, the locket now hanging visibly around his neck, tucked beneath his collar where it rested against his chest. "I wear it now," he said, noticing her gaze. "Every day. It feels strange to have her close again after so long." "I am glad," Marin said. "I never properly thanked you," he said. "Not for the locket. For staying, even after everything that followed it." "I did not know how dangerous staying would be," she admitted. "Would it have changed your choice?" he asked. She considered the question honestly the way she considered everything. "No," she said. "It would not have." He stepped closer, and this time neither of them hesitated, and the space between them closed completely, his hand rising to her face with a gentleness that seemed impossible for hands capable of what she had witnessed in the garden days before. "I do not know what this becomes," he said quietly. "I do not know if I am someone who deserves to keep something as good as what you gave me that night." "That is not your decision to make alone," she said. He almost smiled again, that same rare, startled expression she had seen only a handful of times since Christmas. "No," he agreed. "I suppose it is not." Outside, snow had begun falling over the mansion grounds, quiet and steady, covering the gravel path where a stranger's car had once idled, softening the edges of a house that had spent 11 years guarding itself against loss. "Walk with me," June said, and this time it was not framed as an order or a careful request. It was simply an offering, the kind of sentence a man says when he has finally stopped weighing every word before he lets it leave his mouth. They walked the garden path together, past the spot where she had driven her elbow into a stranger's ribs weeks before, past the panic switch still mounted quietly by the side door, past the tree line where the snow was beginning to gather in soft white ridges along the black iron fence. Neither of them spoke for a long while. The silence between them had changed since Christmas night. It no longer felt like something to fill or escape. It felt like something they were building together, one quiet minute at a time. "My father used to say a man in my position could not afford attachments," June said eventually. "He believed love was a door enemies could walk through, the same way Voss tried to walk through you." I spent most of my life agreeing with him. And now, Marin asked. Now I think he mistook fear for wisdom, June said. He built walls so high he forgot what it felt like to have anyone stand close enough to matter.
I do not want that life.
I do not think I have wanted it for a long time. I only needed someone to walk through the wall before I admitted it. She stopped walking, and he stopped beside her, snow gathering slowly in his dark hair, in the collar of his coat, and for a moment he looked less like the most dangerous man in the city and more like a man who had simply been waiting a very long time to be found. I am not going anywhere, Marin said. Not because you asked me to stay. Because I chose to, back on Christmas night, before I even understood what I was choosing. You could not have known what you were choosing, he said. Not fully. No, she agreed. But I know now. And I am still here. He reached for her hand, and this time there was no hesitation in either of them. No careful distance measured out between staff and boss, between danger and safety. He drew her close, and the kiss that followed was slow and certain, the kind that did not need to rush toward anything because it had already arrived exactly where it needed to be. When they finally parted, he rested his forehead against hers, and for the first time since she had known him, Jun-han looked entirely unguarded, entirely present, a man who had spent 11 years protecting an empire and had only just realized what he actually wanted to protect. I do not know what the coming months will look like, he admitted quietly. Voss is dealt with, but this world does not stay quiet for long. There will be other threats, other men who believe what is mine is theirs to take. Then we will deal with them, Marin said.
Together.
Not because you rescue me and not because I need saving. Because I am not going to disappear just because things get difficult. I never have. No, he said, something like wonder in his voice. I do not suppose you have. They stood together a while longer in the falling snow, the mansion glowing warm and gold behind them, the locket resting quiet and safe against his chest where it belonged. Marin did not know what the coming months would hold, what dangers still moved unseen through the edges of Jun-han's world, or what it would cost either of them to keep choosing each other in a life built on calculated risk. But standing in that garden, beneath a sky gone soft and white, beside a man whose hands had trembled the moment he understood he was not alone anymore, Marin understood one thing clearly. Some things found their way home. And sometimes so did people. And sometimes, if they were fortunate enough and brave enough, they found a way to stay.